There are 7 characters within the Tekken universe who perfectly fit into the 7 deadly sins. How's that for a dramatic intro? What up everyone? While I write up my next lore video, I thought we could have some fun and discuss some characters I feel fit into the 7 deadly sins. Tekken itself is full of some colourful characters, some good, others, well, bad. Now, while I place the characters into their associated sin, I'm going to lay out a few ground rules. I'm just going to be using playable characters without mods, so sorry Zazel, your ass is out. Also, no guest characters, like Geese. I mean, that guy's a major jerk, but he's only in Tekken 7 so far, and he's from The Art of Fighting. I'm sure you're all going to have your own opinions on which character fits into each category. Leave them down in the comments, I'm always down to hear other people's opinions. With that said, let's have some fun. Alright, so the first sin I'm going to talk about is pride. Pride is considered the original and worst of the 7 deadly sins. Pride is the excessive belief and love in one's own abilities and excellence. Essentially, you end up seeing yourself above others. So the interesting thing about pride is that in itself, it isn't necessarily bad. You know, it's good to have pride in your work and ability, but pride can lead itself into other sins. I think a good example within the Tekken universe of pride being a good thing is Hwoarang. See, his rivalry of Jin is driven by pride. He's not a bad guy, but his pride drives him to get better to beat Jin. It's a healthy rivalry in my opinion. Apart from Tekken 5 where Hwoarang actually beats Jin, and Jin thinks, well, we can't have that, transforms into his double form and proceeds to put Hwoarang into the hospital. While Hwoarang might represent a good part of pride, the character who I think fits the sin is Bruce Irvin. So Bruce in himself is a bit of a great character. He's known to be ruthless and violent, except when it comes to helping vulnerable people, especially bullied children. I personally think this leads Bruce into being quite a good pick for the sin of pride. So the main reason why I've picked Bruce is that during a Muay Thai tournament, a bookmaker who was keen to turn a profit offered Bruce a sum of money to rig a fight and lose. When his turn came to fight, Bruce's pride wouldn't allow him to lose, and he ended up beating his opponent to death. So he didn't throw a fight, which was a good thing, but his pride made him commit something way worse. So congrats Bruce, you are the sin of pride. We now move on to the sin of greed. So greed is an insatiable desire for material gain, be it food, money, land, inanimate objects or animate objects, or even social values such as status or power, as if this doesn't perfectly fit Heihachi. When Heihachi was around 30, he launched a coup to seize control of his father's company. When Jinpachi attempted to retake the company, Heihachi imprisoned him beneath the family temple and basically forced him to lift a rock until he got tired. He's also backed gang violence in New York to gain political and territorial control. He was also willing to sacrifice Jin after using him to lure out Ogre, as he no longer needed him. This is all stuff that happened during and before the King of Iron Fist Tournament 3. There's so many reasons why he fits the sin of greed perfectly. Maybe I should do a complete lore breakdown of Heihachi, but there you go. The sin of greed fits Heihachi. Okay, moving on down the ladder, we now move on to the sin of lust. So lust is a psychological force producing an intense desire for something or circumstance. Lust can take many forms, not just the lust for sexuality, but also money or power. My first thought was to put Ganryu, his constant pursuit of Michelle Chang to no success, and then that lust being reignited when he saw her adoptive daughter, Julia Chang. Kind of weird, but the sin of lust, I have put Feng Wei. So Feng has a lust for power and fighting. Feng's lust manifested into him getting addicted to fighting, and when his master scolded him about it, Feng murdered him. Yeah, completely reasonable reaction, Feng. Feng also attacked Asuka's father, so that's why those two don't get along, basically stating weak people don't deserve to live. His lust to become the strongest has put him on the path to find the hidden scroll, which he believes is meant to grant him a super secret technique or something. Spoiler alert, the scroll has no technique and says, "He who destroys all other fighting styles and makes them his own shall become a warrior superior to all men, the dragon god." That's some groundbreaking stuff. Kung Fu Panda 1 storytelling right there. So Feng, the sin of lust. Continuing to move down, we now move to the sin of envy. Envy can be described as a sad or resentful covetousness, sorry I do have trouble pronouncing things sometimes, towards the traits or possessions of someone else. To me, this one's a pretty easy pick. It has to go to Anna Williams. So a big part of Anna's story is being jealous of her older sister Nina. This developed when their father's affection was always for Nina over Anna, kinda like Heihachi loving Kuma more than Kazuya. What is really sad is that while her father trained both Nina and Anna, Anna just desired a normal life, which as per Tekken manual, her father never forgave her for. What a knob. So the jealousy over Nina developed into hatred, and Anna has basically dedicated her life to becoming better than Nina, driven mostly due to her father's neglect. Anna actually has a really interesting lore, so I might make a full video on her in the future, as there's a decent bit I would like to discuss, but it isn't super relevant to this video. So, the sin of envy going to Anna. Alright, next one, the sin of gluttony. So gluttony is defined as excess eating and drinking. I think the examples are pretty much given in the definition. You eat too much, that's gluttony. Drank too much, that's gluttony. You drunk? Well, you get the picture. This one was extremely hard to fill. Ha, pun unintentional. I mean, when you're entering a martial arts tournament, you're more than likely going to be fit. This one is definitely my most controversial pick, but when I thought hard about it, there was a pick I feel I can justify. You see, you could still be a good person and commit the sin. Therefore, the gluttony sin goes to Bob. So Bob is a talented martial artist, but he really struggled to defeat opponents who are larger than him. So Bob left, gained a ton of weight, essentially for his own desires, and has used that for his own vigilante justice. You can definitely make the argument that gluttony should go to Ganryu. I feel as though there's a difference between Bob and Ganryu. See, Bob did it for his own desires, his vigilante justice, whereas Ganryu did it because it's an essential part of sumo culture. You don't do it just because. I feel like there's a little bit of a difference there. You can definitely argue between both. Bob is also, ironically, far more insecure about losing weight than gaining it. So, I don't know, Bob, that food could have been given to African children or something. Shame on you. So the sin of gluttony goes to Bob. Moving on to the sin of wrath. Wrath is defined as a strong feeling of hatred or resentment with a desire for vengeance. This can lead into unaliving, road rage, domestic violence, to name a few. Do you really need to think about this one? Straight up, this goes to Kazuya. I thought Brian might fit this sin as well, but he's just psychotic. He lives for fighting, he doesn't need a reason to fight. To Kazuya, his story begins on vengeance. That's the whole reason he joined the King of Iron Fist Tournament 1. It's also a big part of his plot in Tekken 4, coming to take everything back. Tekken 8, his whole personality is to take over the world, drive it into a maelstrom of chaos. He believes in deprivation, domination, forced capitulation. This man is angry at the world and wants it to feel his wrath. That's some great writing. I should work for Bandai Namco. So yeah, I would love to see you argue this one, but the sin of wrath goes to Kazuya. We now move on to the final sin, the sin of sloth. Sloth is basically the culpable lack of physical or spiritual effort. It can easily be understood as not doing what is right, as that requires effort, such as cleaning up a messy cause, cutting corners, etc, etc. This one was also kinda hard to fill, but I believe Kuma 1 specifically, not Kuma 2, fits the sin of sloth. So let me justify. Heihachi saw a lot of potential in Kuma and trained him up in Kuma Shinken. The thing about Kuma 1 though is that he's quite lazy. I've discussed this in Kuma's video, which if you want to go watch something else about the history of Kuma, go watch that. But Kuma 1 took any possible opportunity to nap. Even though he was extremely loyal to Heihachi, Kuma 1 liked to leave the side of Heihachi to sleep. This lazy approach means that Kuma's fighting style hasn't really ever matured and is quite disjointed. So I rest my case, Kuma gets the sin of sloth. And there we go. They're the 7 characters I think fit the 7 sins. This is definitely up for debate and discussion. I'd love to hear your opinions of who you think fits each sin down in the comments. Feel free to add a justification as well. I'd love to read them. But until next time, enjoy your day.